destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, January 30th, 2025. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Erik Baker, author of Make Your Own Job, How the Entrepreneurial Work Ethic Exhausted America. And later in the show, Teresa Romero, president of the United Farm Workers, joins us to talk about the Trump administration terrorizing some of our most essential workers. Also on the program today, no survivors are expected after an American Airlines plane collided with an Army helicopter over the Potomac, the deadliest aviation disaster in the U.S. since 9/11. This comes after Trump's hiring freezes, which included air traffic controllers, and the gutting of a top aviation safety committee. More on that in a second. Trump signs the Laken-Riley Act, says he plans to put 30,000 migrants in a camp in Guantanamo Bay. He also revokes the temporary protected status for 600,000 people from Venezuela, opening them up to deportation. Trump then signed an executive order directing the federal government to revoke student visas for Hamas sympathizers, whatever that means. Senate aides tell the press that Tulsi Gabbard may not have the votes to move her nomination forward. Trump's QAnon-believing pick for FBI Director Kash Patel, author of one of my favorite books, I mean, I have it here on my desk, The Plot Against the King, has his confirmation hearing today. Maybe this will come up. I don't know.
Gotta get you reading older people's books.
No.
Before bedtime.
Meta will pay $25 million to Donald Trump in a bribe, settlement, over his lawsuit against them for suspending his account after January 6th.
Shakedown.
Yep. I think it was it CBS? One of the other, it may not have been CBS, but another media organization did something similar.
Reminder, Zuckerberg wanted to keep it up, but a bunch of his staff said, we don't want to run the platform where the leader of the country says, when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Yes, that's right. Speaking of bribes, though, disgraced Democratic Senator Bob Menendez gets 11 years in prison and praises Trump in his press conference afterwards. He's doing an Eric Adams, who, by the way, the DOJ is considering dropping the case against him. Israel's ban on UNRWA working in Gaza takes effect today, effectively eliminating its ability to provide aid. And lastly, Israel arrests 12 Palestinians for celebrating the release of Palestinian hostages. The only democracy in the Middle East, folks. All this and more on today's program. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's an EmMajority Report Thursday. Bradley's remote today. It's just myself and Matt. So if we're a little, Matt's doing 2 jobs, running around, I guess rolling around in that rolly chair back there.
Squiddly Diddly, I think, is the reference of the guy, the drumming octopus that sort of has 8 arms going in different directions, and that's who I feel like when I'm running solo.
So double credit to Matt today for that. Also because I sent you like 18 links to pull up before the show. But I mean, I guess I'm just like, this aviation disaster is just really seismic. And for those who don't know, last night, the Reagan National Airport outside of Washington, D.C., there was an American Airlines flight coming from Wichita, Kansas, and it collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter over the Potomac River. The helicopter, it appears, was on a training flight. And as I said in the headlines, it's the deadliest aviation disaster in U.S. airspace since 9/11. Now, in total, it's believed that there were 64 people on board the passenger jet and 3 on the Army helicopter. Some of the folks on this Kansas flight were figure skaters and their coaches and families returning from a training camp. Both U.S. citizens and also some Russian citizens as well. Now, we can't make a causal connection to any one factor at this moment. I want to be clear about that because the information is still coming out. But we do have 2 overarching themes about, at the very least, how the United States relates to aviation and transportation safety in this country. And one is a bit deeper. The first, that first reason really is that Reagan National Airport is overly congested. If we could pull up the Washington Post article here, they did a good job this morning of breaking some of this down. This congestion is a problem of really just slowly building up to putting more flights going through this airport. The Washington Post article explains here at the beginning. The airspace along the Potomac River where an Army helicopter and an airliner crashed Wednesday night poses some of the most complex challenges in the country for pilots, requiring them to rely on layers of procedures and electronic safeguards to avoid a catastrophe. If we could just scroll down to that first or second paragraph here. Military Coast Guard helicopters frequently fly low over the river, sharing the skies with planes on the heavily used takeoff and landing routes for Washington's Reagan National Airport. Congestion in the skies and on runways and taxiways around the airport has raised safety concerns for years. National was built to handle 15 million passengers annually. It now handles 25 million. And keep going because there's a little bit more I wanted to get to in terms of the context. Lawmakers proposed in 2023 to add more flights at National to serve new long-distance routes. Opponents of the idea raised questions about safety. Last year, as part of legislation to fund the FAA, Congress added 5 round-trip flights. The decision came over objections of members of the D.C. area congressional delegation who have long argued that the airport is at capacity. U.S. airlines have had a strong safety record in recent years, with the last mass casualty crash occurring in 2009. Federal aviation officials have scrambled to respond to a spate of near collisions at airports around the country that began in 2023. Industry leaders said they were a warning sign that there was a risk of a crash as air traffic bounced back from pandemic-era lows. The FAA has investigated at least 3 close calls at National in recent years. 2 occurred in quick succession last year, heightening concerns. In one, air traffic controllers instructed a Southwest jet to cross a runway while a JetBlue plane was starting its takeoff roll down the same runway. In the second incident, an American Airlines jet preparing for takeoff nearly collided with a King Air plane that was landing on a shorter runway nearby. The FAA was investigating both incidents. Now, this fight goes back to also it's the gradual increase of flights at this particular airport. Again, this is the airport that like our lawmakers fly through. So their incentives are both personal and then also related to wanting more flights to the areas that they represent. This article from Maryland Matters about this was really interesting. This is the bottom section, Matt. Yep. They go back to this FAA reauthorization fight in 2024 when these DC area lawmakers from Virginia and Maryland were fighting back. Opponents said Washington National, also called DCA, already strains to safely handle the current level of air traffic in and out of the airport. Adding flights will only worsen the safety environment, they said. But lawmakers from outside the D.C. area argued that additional flights would be a positive. Representative Hank Johnson, Democrat of Georgia, said they would add connectivity and economic expansion. It should be noted, by the way, that Georgia, Atlanta, huge aviation hub, one of the biggest airports in the country. So that's probably related here.
I mean, and that's the thing, is that connectivity and economic expansion. Yeah, we're a growing country, actually. There's a, I mean, I guess that's a Democrat saying that, so I can't even hit him on the small government thing. We need to be expanding the safety things of this first, and stop just expecting the benevolence of growth to cure all problems.
And like, you know, look, this is also, it's a Republican House at this time, so they lead the committees and they decide what's going to be added to the FAA authorization. So it's still tilted towards the Republicans, but yeah, that Democrat saying that is extremely depressing. Representative Burgess Owens, Republican of Utah, also applauded the extra flights. This legislation was designed not for one airport or one airline, but for all of us, he said. It gives more convenience, more opportunities to families traveling into Washington, D.C. The 5 new routes have not been selected, but some members, including Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, who is the ranking member on the Senate committee that oversees aviation. By the way, now that the Republicans took back the Senate, he is the leader, have speculated that San Antonio could be one beneficiary. And by the way, that's what happened.
Gives opportunities to families? No, you guys want more flights into where you work.
Exactly. And, you know, they're responding to industry, and they're hearing, I think, from these airlines, this is how the sausage gets made. There was and then this article cites this analysis from Temple University's Fox School of Business, where they found that transportation committee chairs saw flights to their districts increase by more than 5% on average from 1990 to 2019. The analysis, which was published last year in the academic journal Organization Science, also showed that airlines increase direct service to Washington, D.C. From a chair's district. The numbers generally reverted to normal after the chair's term. So this is how this works. And that's the overall, like, systemic, bipartisan, frankly, problem that we're seeing here. But then we have the short-term story that's related directly to Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Now, so this is an article from The Verge pointing this out from this morning, that Elon Musk pushed out the head of the FAA ahead of Donald Trump taking office. Musk has publicly clashed with the FAA and its former chief, Michael Whitaker. Now, Whitaker stepped down just before Trump's inauguration in anticipation of being fired, and now the FAA doesn't have a permanent leader at this current moment because Elon Musk had tweeted something about him. Just scroll down a little bit here, Matt. Michael Whitaker stepped down as FAA administrator on January 20th, the day of Donald Trump's inauguration, after clashing with Elon Musk, whose company SpaceX is regulated by the agency. Musk publicly called on Whitaker to resign after the FAA fined SpaceX for failing to get approval for launch changes. And now the power vacuum at the agency is coming into sharp focus after an Army helicopter collided with an American Airlines jet Wednesday evening in Washington, D.C., killing everyone on board. So we have that. And
we should also note that after the election, but also before it, and just made less noise, planes had to be turned back because this guy was firing rockets off when they were re-entering the atmosphere. This guy is a threat to your safety in all of these places. And I mean, talked a lot about what he's doing in Texas, and sort of space. It's space pollution, literally. It's something that like Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about back in like 2008 of like, we're putting up so much stuff in the skies, and some of it just falls back down to Earth. This stuff is literally causing flights to turn around.
He wants to like have his like cosmic playhouse essentially, and not have a nagging bureaucracy that would say like, maybe you shouldn't put this amount of junk into space because it could fall and kill people, or the bureaucracy that might say like, no, we shouldn't have this many flights going into this busy of an airport that initially was only supposed to have 15 million flights a year, and now nearly doubled at 25 million. So that was on Inauguration Day. Same day, Trump announced hiring freezes, which, by the way, included air traffic controllers and airplane workers. So then January 22nd, Democrats, Representative Steve Cohen and Larson put out this statement. This is number 2. Yeah. Ranking members Larson Cohen's statement on Trump's dangerous freeze of air traffic control hiring. That was 2 days later, January 22nd, 2025. And now, January 29th, the evening of, what do you know? What happened? There was an incredible disaster. We don't know for certain that that's exactly what happened, but we do have this from a reporter of Mother Jones, who said last night, was literally talking to the union representing federal air traffic controllers earlier today about how there's already a major shortage of air traffic controllers, and the resignation offers they just got from OPM could seriously endanger public safety. And last night we saw what happens when the government doesn't work. So again, it's too early to draw causal connections, I think. Although
but the
I think
elements are pretty clear.
The elements are pretty clear. And the original part of what I'm saying about the increase in these flights to this airport, clearly, I think, is a major issue that's independent of the second piece of the Trump administration's influence on this. But even if you can't draw a causal connection to these hiring freezes and to what that Mother Jones reporter was saying, and to the dysfunction that Donald Trump has created, know that this is what their vision is for the future. With Project 2025 and vote and the dismantling of the administrative state, the people that make our travel safe, the people that make our food safe, the people that inspect the drugs that we're ingesting into our bodies, they want those folks all gone so that the billionaires don't have to deal with the cumbersome burden of having to actually provide people products and services that don't kill us all. And that is the goal of the Trump administration, to loot the administrative state and give free rein to those very industries that they already serve. So regardless of I also should say the other theory is that it was DEI. Duh.
It turns out you need to have priorities, and we're not going to be able to have just infinite growth without attending to safety and infrastructure that's going to allow that, and like infinite military sort of maneuvers flying around because we're all of a sudden reopening Guantanamo to start concentration camps. It turns out we can't do all the above, and we don't like Pete Buttigieg here politically, and a big problem with him. But I'll just say, fixing bread prices for a consulting agency applies a little bit more than being an MTV Christian like Sean Duffy now, who is the transportation secretary. These guys are jokers, and to hear them come say we're looking into it, like I what a joke this entire, and Elon Musk firing these people, what a joke this administration is.
I mean, they're already going to blame DEI. It doesn't matter. It won't even matter if the identity
they're going to make DEI popular.
They're repeating it over and over again, which the Democrats could learn from. I mean, God. With the level of repetition that the Republicans engage in terms of messaging, they say the same thing over and over again, and how stupid it is, but it's still able to get across. Can you imagine if we had that same kind of discipline with the Democratic Party? But it's all a coalition of never Trumpers all the way up to the squad, and there's no consistency on anything. And they're still just like struggling to respond and meet this moment. And I'm hoping that the reaction, like, I think Trump overreached with that. I'm going to shut down the government that he did yesterday. And I'm not sure if you guys, I'm sure you talked about it quite a bit.
Yep.
But the fact that there isn't a blitz of Democratic Party spokespeople saying the exact same thing right now about Donald Trump endangering Head Start and SNAP, necessary things that feed and educate people in our society and the turbulence that cause, it's a failure. And like, for all of our sakes, they have to get it together and figure out a way to actually attack this administration.
And one final point before we get to our first guest in the ads, but the people are already there. The people sense of urgency from and I'm not just talking about like, far left people that are always sort of keyed up on this stuff. I'm talking about normie people too. They are desperate for any sort of sign that there's urgency and not the complacency that has, sentenced us to where we're at now.
100%. All right, folks. We are going to get to Erik in just a second, but first, a word from one of our sponsors. Sam waxes poetically about Factor. I don't have kids, so I'm maybe have a little bit more time to make my meals, but I still like Factor. Sam really appreciates it because time is of the essence, and the meals are something that his kid actually likes, even though we know that a little bit of a picky eater sometimes, kids tend to be. Factor helps optimize your nutrition this year and your family's. Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. We want to thank Factor for supporting the Majority Report. Factor lets you do you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Get started at factormeals.com/majority50off. That's one word. And use code majority50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto Meals. Based on a randomized controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto, results will vary depending on diet and exercise, but with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that cannot be beat. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/majority50off and use code majority50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code majority50off at factormeals.com/majority50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, folks, quick break. And when we come back, we will be speaking to Erik Baker about his book, Make Your Own Job, How the Entrepreneurial Work Ethic Exhausted America. We are back, and we are joined now by Erik Baker, historian, lecturer in the History of Science Department at Harvard University, and author of Make Your Own Job, How the Entrepreneurial Work Ethic Exhausted America. Erik, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So, what is America's culture of entrepreneurialism, right? How far back does it go? How do you characterize what it entails?
Yeah, so this is kind of something that a lot of people think of as sort of American as apple pie. America and entrepreneurship go hand in hand. But actually, it's surprising how recent in some ways this idea is, and in particular, I argue that it represents a major change in the way that Americans have thought about why you're supposed to work. What makes working good. So I distinguish between a variety of different work ethics. People talk about the Protestant work ethic and other kinds of ways of sort of formulating the work ethic. And what I want to say is that at the time that people first started talking about entrepreneurship, and especially about being entrepreneurial, being an entrepreneurial person in the early 20th century, This was a response to changes in the structure of the economy that made it so that those old work ethics didn't really make sense anymore, because in many cases people were confronting a scarcity of work. We talk about deindustrialization in the Rust Belt in the last 50 years, but you see similar phenomena going back to that kind of Gilded Age period. So now you instead, to explain to people why they need to work, what makes working good, it's not just about putting your head down and doing the work that you're supposed to do, but there's an element of creation that needs to be involved, making work for yourself and for others. So that's kind of how I frame what distinguishes what I call the entrepreneurial work ethic from other work ethics.
So this precedes basically post-industrialization, which that would not have been my guess before I read what you wrote. I would have assumed that a lot of this kind of comes in with the ushering in of the neoliberal era, but you point to the crisis of joblessness that came out of the Great Depression. Can you expand a little on how that had an effect on this entrepreneurial ethic you describe?
Yeah, so again, I think it's true that a lot of these ideas do feel super recent. People like Elon Musk and whoever, they frame themselves as doing something kind of totally new. But that's part of the shtick, the entrepreneurial sort of self-branding. We're doing something no one's ever done before. But in reality, this rhetoric has been around for a long time, and it kind of comes in cycles. That's what I noticed in doing the research for this book. So in moments where, again, for example, in the depths of the Great Depression, where you have, employment in some cases, thinking almost a quarter of the entire workforce out of work, this kind of old rhetoric of, well, you just need to, put your head down and do your job and don't complain. That's not really appealing if you don't have a job to do. And so, of course, for a lot of people in circumstances like that, they get involved in political organizing. The Congress of Industrial Organizations, the CIO, was founded in this period. The Communist Party membership swelled. But then at the same time, you also had a lot of people who were very concerned by those developments, who were saying, oh, no, in order to get back on your feet, you don't need policy changes, you don't need collective organizing, but everyone still has the ability to, in the titular slogan, make your own job, even when times are tough.
It's also, in the modern sense, it's bipartisan in the way that, the Harris campaign in particular, I think to its detriment, made this small business owner thing a fixture of the campaign, and Democrats then lost the lowest income bracket for the first time since the 1960s, and but like the small business thing, I've been hearing since I can remember paying attention to politics, and it is both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, that's completely right, and one of the things that I think makes our kind of worship of entrepreneurship so stubborn is the way that it has this kind of almost magical ability to kind of be all things to all people. So Republicans have a version of entrepreneurship that's all about family and small communities and restoring the kinds of traditional bonds that have been destroyed by newfangled moral values. But liberals also have their own version of entrepreneurship that's exactly the opposite. It's about progress and about kind of creative solutions to social problems, and that's really, really thoroughly embedded in the DNA of the modern Democratic Party. This idea that we're the Democrats, so we care about poverty, we care about inequality, but also we can't do anything too socialist about it. So instead, we have this kind of magic wand called entrepreneurship that's able to fix these problems without any kind of invasive big government action.
Well, it really, I think, when you put it like that, it just shows how right-wing our politics are compared to like a normal political spectrum, when the Democrats and the Republicans are both privileging the idea of private entrepreneurship over even, the rights of workers elevating. And of course, the Democrats do that more than the Republicans, but it should be a starker contrast than that. And it does feel like, not to make it a cultural pathology, because that's reductive and silly, but you did mention like the idea of the Protestant work ethic, and that mythology, I think, at the very least plays a role. Could you explain why I'm right or wrong on that front?
Yeah, totally. So there is, there is a deep cultural tradition in America of valorizing hard work for its own sake, and that's clearly in some ways the soil that a lot of these ideas sprung from. But it also requires work to again kind of reformulate these ideas to make sense to people. We all have a cultural inheritance, ideas that we grew up with. We also have the ability to challenge them, to decide that they don't make sense anymore. So, I really see the history of entrepreneurialism that I tell in this book is a story of almost kind of give and take, a certain kind of dance between working people who do have these ideas about working, the importance of working hard. You're rewarded for you're persevering and all of this, and groups of people, whether they're managers, business school professors, self-help writers, who are trying to kind of rebrand these ideas or kind of keep them in fashion when there are sort of worrying signs that these ideas aren't resonating, or they're not kind of doing their the kind of ideological work they're supposed to do.
Self-help books, you spend a good amount of time on that in your book, which they're definitely a pet peeve of mine. So it really. Can you talk about that phenomenon and the outgrowth of self-help books? I mean, is that a new phenomenon that matches up with this timeline? Because there were etiquette books, I feel like, prior to this, directed at women to be desirable and men to be gentlemanly. That's the closest analogy I can think to the modern self-help industry, but it's more capitalistic than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. You can find, I would, in some ways, I think the origins of advice literature, I mean, this is a really ancient phenomenon. The Book of Proverbs in the Bible, there's, all kinds of, instruction. If you want to be, rich and happy, these are the kinds of things you need to do. So in that sense, it's not a new thing. What I emphasize is that the rise of the entrepreneurial work ethic leads to a new kind of almost sort of common sense, a new sort of kind of common set of themes in self-help writing that emphasize especially the importance of, in their probably the best-selling self-help book of the 20th century is The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, who presided over the president's first reading. But this idea, the key to success has to do with the kinds of thoughts that we think, and in particular about sort of not responding to obstacles with sort of a belief that you can kind of create new opportunities to move past them. That's an idea that is a little more modern. You start to see it at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, and so much of self-help literature to this day, even sometimes when it's in a more kind of highbrow scientific, sort of psychological idiom, that's still the core message.
And what do you make of this? Honestly, this phenomenon of really mass, I would say, speculation among the population, whether it be cryptocurrency or gambling. I repeat this stat all the time, but the proliferation of sports gambling has caused more debt amongst young men in states where it's legal than in states where it's not. I think that's almost an ideological child of what you're describing, where it's like, be your own entrepreneur, be your own speculator.
Yeah. Well, another thing that's kept the entrepreneurial work ethic in circulation is that it's it's a work ethic that admits the truth that a lot of work sucks, which is very different from the kind of more traditional, when people think about the Protestant work ethic. It says all work is good. Entrepreneurship actually says a lot of work is bad. It's kind of
It's a
soul
grind.
crushing.
The grind
It's a
set.
grind. Yeah.
The grind, yeah.
And it's precarious. You can't trust it. You always got to be looking out for the next thing. And so I think in a lot of ways this resonates with people, and so they say, okay, so if you have some kind of terrible job, the question is what do you do about it? And entrepreneurship is a way to say, well, instead of taking a more political response, that you can be your own boss. If you just trade crypto or get rich on FanDuel, you can get out of the shitty job and but still sort of have access to all the virtues that we attach to success and work and everything in our culture.
So why does it persist despite the returns not matching the promises? And why does it persist across class lines, frankly?
Yeah, well, so something I say in the book is that I think this ideology, in some ways, the miracle of it is that it feeds on its own failure. So there's in some ways the whole story of modern American history is these moments where there was a lot of excitement and enthusiasm about the kind of new economy that entrepreneurs were creating. This is a rhetoric that's associated with the 1990s and the Clinton era, but you find similar versions of this idea, honestly, going back to the 1920s. But in succession, eventually, just the way that capitalism works, eventually those markets get oversaturated. There's a bust to accompany the boom, and so in that trough, what entrepreneurship is able to say is, well, we can do it again. Yeah, there's a way to it almost kind of validates the pain and the sense of precarity that people feel when that's happening, and but it sort of gives them an out again. I think that in sort of my own adulthood, I think about the way that in the response to the Great Depression or the Great Recession, which was a period of real sort of political upsurge, Occupy, Bernie. At the same time, this was really the boom years of the gig economy. A lot of people, trying to sort of get win the venture capital lottery. So these times when, again, people are sort of struggling economically, it's almost like there's a kind of divergent path, sort of two sort of roads that they can go down, and so one of them is a more kind of political, constructive way. But the fact that entrepreneurship, unlike other kind of ideologies that are more kind of like, I don't know, gaslight people, say no, there's actually there's nothing wrong, the economy is great, whatever. Entrepreneurship says no, actually, like your economic circumstances are really bad. You're not wrong to think that you're in trouble here, but there is a solution. And if you buy my book, or listen to my podcast or watch my YouTube video, I'll teach you the secret to how to make your own job.
Yeah. Lastly, Erik, can this kind of ecosystem exist if there was really a left alternative that didn't place the onus on individuals to uplift their own circumstances in a society that pretends that it's meritocratic? But I mean, I don't know. We solved it by eliminating DEI, so now Tucker Carlson's son can get hired for the VP slot, or Pete Hegseth, who earned it, can become the head of defense. So it seems to me that this is a marketplace that exists purely because we don't really have a left alternative that's messaging in that way or providing in that way.
Yeah, not only a left alternative, but there's a kind of cyclical are a sort of vicious cycle where, not only do you not have that kind of left alternative for people to latch onto, but there's precisely because of the evisceration of the left in this country, there's also no social safety net. So that experience of precarity is really bad. If you're not, because we don't have Medicare for all, because losing your job is more devastating in the United States than it is in a lot of other countries. If you're unemployed, you don't have. Yeah, exactly. You kind of, so for a lot of people feel like, well, I can't sit around, maybe like organizing long term, there's a way to make things better, but in the short term, I gotta take care of myself, my family. And so, that there's the entrepreneurship stuff provides the kind of glimmer of a short-term solution. And that can be really appealing, precisely because of the mess that we're in.
Well, Erik Baker, really appreciate your time today. The book is called Make Your Own Job, How the Entrepreneurial Work Ethic Exhausted America. We'll put a link to that down below wherever people are listening or watching this. Thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care. All right, folks, quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking to Teresa Romero, president of the United Farm Workers. We are back, and we are joined right now by Teresa Romero, president of the United Farm Workers. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Teresa.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, and by the way, congrats on the congressional medal, right? I mean, I saw that earlier when I was doing some research, so that's a high honor.
It definitely was. It definitely has, and you know what? To me, it was proof that President Biden saw farm workers, their struggles and their contributions.
Well, that's good to hear. We are in a very difficult time right now for farm workers in this country. Matt, I sent you that tweet from last week. United Farm Workers put out this image here. Basically, it seems like this threatening message was sent to multiple different locations. We're pulling this up here. Yeah. Multiple UFW union offices received this in the mail this week, and it says, report illegal aliens at schools, at work, at church, at restaurants, in your neighborhood. There is nowhere to hide. This was sent again to multiple locations. Trump's coming is what it says there. So I guess, Teresa, if you could just react to those threats, and we can take it from there.
It is inhumane. We are a country of immigrants. We're a country, all of us came from somewhere else. And the fact that we are terrorizing immigrants, but mostly immigrants of color, who contribute to our economy, who contribute to their communities, who have bought homes, who pay taxes, and are threatened like this, it should be illegal, but for sure it's inhumane.
And what has the environment been like for farm workers since Trump took office earlier last week?
It is, like I said, they're being terrorized. They are afraid to even go to church, to go to the market, to buy food for their family. Children are afraid to go to school because they don't know if their mom and dad are going to be home when they get back. It has, two of our members were stopped. They were just driving home from work, and they were stopped by immigration. And two of them were detained, and within 24 hours, they were already in Mexico.
And can you speak about the United Farm Workers and how your union includes folks who are undocumented, right? And just some of the folks that are a part of your union, and how everybody is standing really in solidarity, but also in fear of this crackdown.
Absolutely. We all know that the only way that our workforce can be protected is having a union contract, because they're undocumented, they are abused to no end. They're threatened. There've been cases where they're sexually abused. And what we're trying to do and make sure that we protect them. And the best way to do it is with a union contract. But also we are doing sessions to inform not only farm workers, but our immigrant community of what their rights are. And they need to understand that, like anybody else, they have the right to an attorney. They have the right to not sign anything, not to say anything. Unfortunately, from what we have heard from workers who have been detained, they're intimidated. They're yelled at, they're threatened, to where they are forced to sign whatever they put in front of them. And this is not our legal system. And farm workers are being, not only farm workers, but immigrants of color are being targeted and intimidated.
Can you speak a bit about how the threat of deportation is used against farm workers, perhaps if they have complaints about their work environment or unsafe conditions or abuse? What are some of the stories you'd like our audience to know about how that is deployed?
We have had cases where workers, not under contract, but were brave enough to file a complaint. And one of the things that has happened in the past is that the attorneys for growers have called immigration. So before they enter the place we're going to testify, they're detained and they're deported. Farm workers who say, you have not paid me, I worked these many hours and you didn't pay me, they are fired. So they're not asking for more than the rights. Look, farm workers work under very difficult conditions. Here in California, we're having fires, and we're talking about it because it is in an area where it is heavily populated. But farm workers go through this every year. They work under dangerous conditions because the air quality is dangerous. It's horrible. They work under temperatures in California. The temperatures the last couple of years have gone to 120 degrees. There are states in our country that in the winter, it's very cold, and they continue to work, to put food on our tables.
And for children too, do you hear stories often of the abuse of child labor as well by maybe some of the employers that you're familiar with, that some of your members have had horrible experiences with?
Absolutely. We have even reached out to media to make sure that they really talk about these issues. There are different states. We need to remember that farm workers were excluded from the NLRB in the 1930s. So they do not have a right to organize and get a contract. I mean, they can organize, but the employers cannot give them, a contract that they deserve. There's only 2 states where farm workers have these rights: California and New York. So whatever happens in other states, the abuses that happens in other states, we report them. We call legislators on those states to make sure that if they have children. However, we also need to remember there's some states that allow children to work starting at the age of 12. So they're not necessarily breaking the law, but we need to change those laws. We need to make sure that farm workers, their children, their families are protected. We have in California heat illness protections that growers are not enforcing. And farm workers die because of the high temperatures. And all we're asking for is access to water. We're asking for a 10-minute break every 2 hours if the temperatures are 95, in a shaded area for them to be able to rest. That's all we are asking for. That's what the regulations say here in California, and they're not implementing them.
And with this threat of deportation, this just emboldens these folks to essentially say, screw off. You want basic safety? We don't care, because we can just call ICE.
Exactly. And the hypocrisy of the growers, they know that they need this workforce. These workforce, farm workers, these men and women have been working in agriculture for 20, 30, 40 years. They're professionals, they're experienced, they depend on them. But although they know that they need this workforce, they're opposed a path to citizenship for farm workers. And during the previous Trump administration, we passed through Congress the Farm Workforce Modernization Act with Republican support. And we're going to introduce it again because these workforce, they are essential workers. They feed us every day. They're the backbone of agriculture, and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect.
How do you think that we got to this point in America where, frankly, the immigration conversation has moved so far to the right? I mean, I feel that the Democrats have not done enough, frankly, to combat some of the real just like racism and horrific brutality that we're seeing from the Republicans, and now they're taking advantage of it.
Absolutely. And it is getting worse under this administration. I think Democrats can do more, and we're working with them to make sure that we get this bill introduced. It is the recognition of this workforce needs to be appreciated by everybody in this country: legislators, consumers, Republicans, Democrats, independents. We all need to understand that we're all immigrants. You and I, or our ancestors, came from somewhere else. So let's come together and do something for this workforce. Let's come together and do something for immigrants in general, who are, like I said earlier, contributing to this economy in the billions of dollars that they pay in taxes. So yes, I agree with you. A lot more needs to be done, and it has to come from both parties.
And you mentioned the consumer side of things. Can you speak a little bit about how in this election grocery prices were a big part of the concerns of the voters, and Trump has tried to capitalize on that? And what this does for grocery prices because of how much our economy relies on these farm workers?
He absolutely capitalized on that. I agree with you 100%. The price of the products are not set by the workers. They're set by the big corporations and the big companies, and they're the ones that set the price higher, do not pay more to their employees, and their profits are higher. But I don't want to make this issue about the price of food. I really want to make this issue about the human pain, the human toil on immigrants, on their families. When I listen to a child, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, that tells me they don't want to go to school because they're afraid mom and dad are not going to be home when they get back, this is what happened. These children are U.S. citizens. So it is For the consumers, I know it is about the price of food. Farm workers have no saying on that. So let's look at them as human beings.
Absolutely. And you mentioned some of those stories. What do you anticipate going forward? I know that's hard to even predict, but just in terms of you're already seeing the pain that you describe, and it's been less than 2 weeks. So how bad can this get, and how bad is it right now?
It is bad, and it is going to get bad. Even if the deportations are slowed down, the fear and the threat of those deportations is going to be in the minds of immigrants, of children, of adults, and it's that is not going to change. Everything that they do, everything that they accept from employers is going to be based on that fear. So the abuses are going to be greater. Their challenges are going to be greater. The fear that the children are growing under is going to be devastating. So even if the deportations slow down, the consequences are going to be greater.
And can you speak about the Trump administration's effort to categorize immigrants as criminals, both by just kind of saying it, even though they may be here under temporary protected status, or they may just be undocumented? But he's trying to blur the line just by having basically a civil violation of basically maybe not having your documentation into a level of criminality where he wants the photo op of them in cuffs off military planes or at Guantanamo Bay. I mean, that level of dehumanization is so deliberate. Yes. What's your reaction?
He has used that to demonize immigrants of color, because he is not going into white neighborhoods where I can guarantee you that there is going to be also immigrants, that they deserve also to be here. They deserve the right to be here. But he is demonizing immigrants of color. The majority of the crimes in this country are not committed by immigrants. The majority of the most difficult work in this country is done by immigrants. The majority of workers who suffer abuse by employers are immigrants. So the fact that he's demonizing, and it pains me and it angers me that many people are buying his lies. I'm an immigrant. I'm a U.S. citizen. And now I have to carry with me proof that I'm a U.S. citizen. Why? Because I'm brown. And I can be stopped at any time for whatever reason and detained if I cannot prove that I'm a U.S. citizen.
Lastly, Teresa, what would be your advice? Because I'm concerned about my neighbors here in New York City. Eric Adams is now basically openly begging for Donald Trump's pardon. So my assessment is that he's going to let him do raids in the city if he wants to. For folks that may not be in a state with a Democratic governor or in an area where they feel like they can be safe, and who knows what's safe at this point, it's the federal government. But what would be your advice to anybody listening to this who to save themselves if they can, or try to, yeah.
I want to make sure that people understand what their rights are. I want them to understand that, and I know it's difficult because fear controls what we do in many cases, but I want them to have and reach out to an attorney and have the name of that attorney with them. And if they're detained, that all they do is, this is my attorney, contact my attorney. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to sign anything. Once they see a name of an attorney, I think their actions are, or I'm hoping that their actions are going to be different. But I want people to remember that they have rights, even if they're undocumented. And they need to enforce those rights to protect themselves and their families.
Well, really appreciate your time today, Teresa. If you can support the United Farm Workers, please do. And if you're listening to this and you think you may be subject to some of these deportation policies, please take Teresa's advice. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Emma, for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, folks, we're going to wrap up the free part of this program and head into the fun half, where we'll be taking your calls, reading your IMs, all of that. We have so much news, obviously. We haven't even gotten to the RFK hearings currently, the Cash Patel hearings.
He got into it with Bernie Sanders, saying Bernie was owned by Big Pharma, and because Bernie, of course, doesn't take any money from pharma, PACs or anything like that, but workers in any industry, including pharma, support Bernie. So that's where RFK made that point. And I think that's actually a really useful way to differentiate my critique or our critique of farmers, big pharma versus the crank, afraid of needles idiots that RFK is corralling like livestock.
Do you have that available? Did he tweet it or something? RFK?
There's an exchange. We can play it in the fun half on the other side of it.
We should. Yeah, the guy. There might not be an industry that's more opposed, that would have been more opposed to the presidency of Bernie Sanders than the healthcare industry, given his Medicare for All proposal.
Jimmy Dore-ism and RFK-ism is an op. It is a psy-op, actually, that is protecting pharma, because the real thing that pharma wanted to protect in the past 4 years, and the real problem that, say, the third world developing countries have with our pharmaceutical companies, is the protection of the IP for these new vaccine technologies. It is not that the vaccine technologies are actually secretly killing you. You idiots. You goddamn idiots. It is because they want to protect IP and monopolize it so that they can continue raking in the financial reward of that. And all of this, we need to look into Fauci and stuff like that, that even like Taibbi's doing. I haven't watched the Tucker thing yet, but I imagine it's disgraceful. But I'll watch it this weekend. All that stuff is an op for all of these. That's why they are proximal to venture capitalists. It's all the exact same financial parasites that want the markets to continue, the equity markets to continue being really useful for people to make passive income. Bernie Sanders would have, like, the Bernie Sanders approach would have made these sorts of things publicly available to the world, because guess what? They did save lives. They should have been applied more. And it's funny, like, I mean, I'm going a little bit on.
No, I
got a lot of opinions on this stuff too. Like the RFK saying, why did so many Americans die from COVID? It's because we wanted to get them back to work, Bobby, because we're laissez-faire. And we said, okay, you know what China did? Locked that shit down. Okay, they lied to it. They lied about a lot of the stuff in the early part of it. There's not great communication, transparency in a place like China. Nonetheless, they eventually came around and started going after that virus in a way we didn't. And so we killed a lot of people. And Bobby just wants to point out, like, it's you fat pores.
Yeah.
You fat pores that aren't, because ultimately why Bobby Kennedy isn't pushing Medicare for all, and why Jimmy Dore now from his giant house in California isn't pushing Medicare for all, is because it costs too much to cover your obese or your diseased ass, and they don't want to pay the tax.
It is honestly totally consistent with him being one of these weird, rich, old, like, aristocratic guys that sees health as like a series of like personal consumptive choices, because he's never had to make a decision that would have affected him getting any health care. So
he can get his health care. It's clear.
Yeah.
You can look at him and see he's getting whatever health care he wants.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, truly looks like, well, maybe I'll save my cracks about his leathery appearance for the fun half. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning, we had a jam-packed show on Tuesday. Grace Blakely talking about economics, who's one of my favorite speakers on economics, and Asal Rad, who we've had in a number of times, talking about the Middle East stuff. Great episodes. And in the post game, we had that's not the post game. Neil Meyer talking about Democrats, and every time they lose an election, trying to, and scary to me, less and less convincingly, seem as stewards of the working class. And I would just say, like, if you're pointing out, hey, look at this new comms shop that helps Democrats, including Bernie and also Greg Kassar, do working class messaging. I would ask, what other kind of class messaging have we been doing? And should we just maybe not do any of that? And maybe every comms messaging organization should be a working class messaging point. But anyway, yeah, it's Neil Meyer, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get access to that.
All right. And on ESPN, Bradley and I, no OT today because no games for the NFL, but you can check out our episode where we talked about the conference championships and talked a little bit about the upcoming Super Bowl, youtube.com/ESPN show. All right, we'll bring in Brandon and Binder in the fun half. We have Brandon? No Binder yet.
No Binder yet. Let me see if I can get Brandon on.
Hello, Brandon. Let's go.
Go.
God. That joke's already old.
Let me get rid of that.
I gotta stop.
It's great.
What's the joke?
Let's go, Brandon.
It's less of a joke and more of a misunderstanding, I suppose.
Look, I'm
Actually,
still referencing 30 Rock, so.
It's probably about this time 8 years ago that we had Fuck Donald Trump, that song come out. FDT.
I don't
Fuck
remember
Donald
that.
Trump. You don't remember that? Who was that came out with that? Is that YG? No.
Maybe it was YG. That sounds like YG. I think that was YG.
It's a good song. I'll put that back in my workout playlist.
I like Donald Trump by Mac Miller. That one's a good one. It's not as anti Donald Trump, but it's a good song.
Well, he ended up. I like that song a lot too. That's on my workout playlist. But even though it is pro Donald Trump back, but that was then he became very anti when he, it just. Trump used to be substitute for rich guy in like songs and in movies. It's a huge part of his cultural resonance today.
It's the funniest thing when a DeSantis thinks like, oh, I can be the Donald Trump. It's like, okay, get referenced in 1,000 rap songs. Right. You might have a chance.
Right.
It was YG featuring Nipsey Hussle.
Oh, Nipsey Hussle.
R.I.P.
What's he been up to these days?
Nipsey Hussle's dead.
Died.
Oh, died. Right. That's why I knew. Oh my God. Oh my God. I
Could you
wasn't
imagine
a joke.
DeSantis? Could you imagine DeSantis in a Home Alone movie? Could you imagine like Ron DeSantis in like Home Alone 3? He'd be one of the wet bandits.
Yeah.
He has like the flop sweat. He'd be one of the wet bandits for sure.
All right, guys. The number is 646-257-3920. Maybe we'll see Binder in the fun half. We will see. Oh wait,
Maybe.
What's happening on the discourse, Brandon? Sorry.
Oh yeah, so we have a new episode out on the Patreon, revisiting Biden's legacy, talking about what we expect of the Donald Trump administration. And then obviously I've been streaming and I'll be streaming tomorrow. I guess we'll probably go over the RFK hearings. So, it'll be a good time.
That sounds fun.
That sounds fun. I'm sorry. I just can't believe it. Oh, God. The fact that we're going to have to play that and hear that guy's damn voice. We try our best. All right. Number is 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait, look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
Yeah, I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. So was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Was offered a tour, sushi, and
that's what we call it in the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. We shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
wow.
Sushi. I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind. So was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid. Twerk. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
I had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid. Twerk.
I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but like I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job. Twerk?
That's a real thing. That's got real thing. Real thing.
Willy Wonka twerk?
That's a real thing. That's got real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered to twerk?
That's a real thing. That's got real thing. Real thing. That's
Twerk?
a real thing. That's got real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered to twerk?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
That offered to twerk?
That's a real thing. That's got
Poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion. Real thing. That's got
Poker with the boys. That offered to twerk?
That's a real thing. That's got
Poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Twerk? Sushi and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, bro.
Twerk? Sushi and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Twerk?
Deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has
Twitch,
the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Poggers.
Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the Majority Report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Right.
Rangers and Knicks are doing great.
Now, shut up. You don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's
No.
one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best. Pilot.
Twerk?
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't bitch. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is. So I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh,
Sorry,
she
finance.
wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I don't have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the...
Are back, folks. We are back. It is the fun half, and we're here with one Brandon Sutton.
I'm here. I'm here, folks.
Say hello. Here we go. I'm gonna open up the phone line 646-257-3920. Alex G's Treehouse. My son is nonverbal and has autism, but Mark Andreessen was on a podcast and he told the interviewer they were going to stop funding disability benefits because it's mostly just college kids trying to get meds and skip classes. I'm so relieved to find out my son is just faking it, and I'm excited to see him pick himself up by his bootstraps and get his shit together. Yeah,
again, Mark Andreessen got basically his first money from taking public or I guess marketing something that was developed at a university, and I think it was Netscape, right? And then making that public. And these are the eggheads. Which is what primitive accumulation is the Marxist term for this sort of thing. That get to decide all this stuff. A lot of the same guys that just decided, like PayPal. How many billionaires were made from PayPal? And everyone knew that eventually there need to be some sort of internet way to pass money along. And they were just the ones that got there first. And now you get like all sorts of different freaks that get to run the world. Right, exactly.
Sandman, stub my toe. Thanks, DEI.
I still say thanks Obama. Do you guys ever find yourself going thanks Obama like anytime anything bad happens? Yeah, I do it all the time. Like, yeah, thanks Obama. Like, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that does. And I mean, but Trumpism unfortunately has trumped all of those. Like, there's so many little just phrases that Trump has just made sad, or like all of his little isms, I feel like have even more staying power than any of that stuff from the Obama era.
I think Trump's like character traits, like his like personality traits, like are more bombastic, but some of like the best like conservative memes came out of the Obama administration. Like, 'cause that's when they were first dipping their toes into being like, deeply insane.
Right, which it was mostly Michelle Obama being a man.
People act like there's some sort of devolution, and the real reality is that we just get it in 4K as opposed to like 720p.
Yeah,
that we got in the Obama administration, because the Michelle, of, like, she's a man or Obama. The birth certificate thing, like insane.
Dick Cheney, as Brad said, I think we need to tie a lot of the current immigration policy back to Obama, starting with Homan. Obama gave him the Presidential Rank Award in 2015. I did not even know that. I mean, Homan just talks like a guy that's like a freaking Gestapo. How can a Democratic administration reward that kind of guy? But
you gotta get tough.
I'm sure he helped, with that Obama's many deportations.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that being tough on immigration with Obama is like tough on crime. It was like showing, it was the Obama administration showing that it was okay for you to vote for him over like the Republicans, because he was going to be just as tough on crime, and also the drone war, right? So like his foreign policy was very kinetic and, conservative.
Right.
I also think the rivalrous way, I think there is a rise in nativism. I don't think it's necessary. Like, I think the sentiment was going pro-immigrant actually in the past year or so, but to the extent there's more anti-immigrant sentiment now than there was in 2008, 2009, it's because we haven't done anything to address the fundamental inequality in this country, and mobility is getting worse and worse, and the rich people are getting richer and richer. So you're basically turning the temperature up on all this stuff, and we're going to see, until we address things like rent prices and how indebted people are, I think we're going to see more and more of these pathologies, whether it's misogyny, whether it's racism, nativism, get worse and worse.
I mean, liberalism is on its, on death's door, essentially. The alternative has not, the Republicans have very aggressively and effectively presented their alternative vision for the country and for the world. And liberals are unable to do that because they're a coalition of everybody that's just like not the fascists. And
also some fascists too.
Fair.
Zionist.
I mean, Biden did just is a liberal and also
it's a big tent.
Genocide. So
it's a big
tent.
It's a big tent because there's a lot of clowns in it. So.
Yeah. All right, let's take a call really quickly. Calling from a 970 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think, though, you have us on speaker, which is a cardinal sin.
Is that better?
Somehow it's worse.
Oh no, I'm driving. That's why.
It's all right. Then just be careful and keep it quick, please.
For sure. I just am, this is Leo calling from California. I called earlier this week. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to every federal worker, because the news hasn't been covering it super well. It is not a buyout. You have to keep working until September. Because I've seen, you can read the NPR article about it. There's a lot of lawyers who are talking about it. But it is not a federal buyout. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all the other federal workers out there who are listening. Don't think that you don't have to work. You have to work, and then you just have no protection.
All right.
So just be careful out there.
Thanks for the heads up, Leo. Have a good one.
Have a nice one.
You too. All right. Let's actually. Okay. You want to do 8 here? So Donald Trump has announced, and he did this after signing the Laken-Riley Act, which allows for police and other law enforcement to essentially detain and deport people who are here and don't have permanent citizenship if they're charged with a crime. Not convicted, charged. And it also empowers state attorneys general to essentially subvert the federal government if they want to and engage in some of like the deportation activities as well. Although I don't know if that's going to really be a problem for them with the Trump administration, and they're going to be working with them in lockstep. So when he signed this law, Trump basically announced that he wants to detain and hold up to 30,000 immigrants at Guantanamo Bay, which, for people that may not remember the Bush administration, that was the site of torture, horrific, inhumane treatment, sexual assault, waterboarding, forced feeding. the people that were detained there, most of them were innocent. There were only 7 convictions, and at its peak, Guantanamo in like 2003 was housing nearly 700 basically Muslim people in the midst of our war on terror.
One of the most important books for Americans to read, in my opinion, which reads like a real world 1984, is Muhammadu Ould Salahi's Guantanamo Diaries, which was, I think, originally released in redacted form. I think some of the redactions might have been removed now. But it is worth picking up if you want a backstory on one person who was tortured for no reason.
It's one of the worst crimes that we've ever committed in the past, 30 years, essentially. And Trump is working overtime to recategorize immigrants as criminals by definition, basically. Anybody and non-white immigrants in particular. So here's Pete Hegseth, who served at Guantanamo Bay.
Pet Hegseth.
Yeah, here's Pig Hegseth. Oh, wait, whatever. Here's the abuser of women, according to his mother, Pete Hegseth, talking about their plans at Guantanamo Bay.
Who knows a little bit about Guantanamo. He was stationed there. Secretary of Defense
Flex on him.
Pete Hegseth. How you doing, Secretary?
Hey, Jesse, good. How are you?
Very good. So we actually can accommodate 30,000 criminal migrants at Gitmo?
Absolutely, we can. And we can plus that up very rapidly. As you mentioned, I served there. I know exactly the places where this would happen. Guantanamo has long been a place for migrants. In fact, in the 90s, tens of thousands of Haitian and Cuban migrants staged there as part of a crisis. We have an even bigger crisis on our hands right now. It was mentioned, 7,500 violent illegals have been captured by ICE in the last 9 days. God bless them. Where do you move them? I'll tell you what, no one's going to be waiting on the Defense Department. We're going to lean forward. We've made sure that we staging on the border to protect it, that we've got gray tails, which are known as military aircraft, to help mass deportations. And Guantanamo Bay, Jesse, is a perfect spot. We don't want illegal criminals in the United States, not a minute longer than they have to be. Move them off to Guantanamo Bay, where they can be safely maintained until they are deported to their final location, their country of origin, where they are headed. So we feel great about this plan. We know we can execute it, and the Defense Department's prepared to do everything we can. We just laud DHS and ICE for what they've done, and we're coming alongside them to make sure we protect the American people.
Is the Defense Department ready for...
That's it. Yeah. Why is the Defense Department involved? Well, I mean, I guess it's because Guantanamo Bay is involved, but that presents a whole other series of deeply troubling questions about the role of the United States military in this effort to put 30,000 immigrants that they're claiming are criminals without evidence into a mass camp on Guantanamo Bay, which has a history of abuse and shadowy behavior. To put it mildly, Amnesty International called it a gulag. That's when he says 1994, he is right. Bill Clinton did previously use that Guantanamo base, and that's separate from the maximum security prison. There's another part of the base that has areas where you can theoretically house migrants, and Clinton had used it to process Haitian and Cuban refugees and asylum seekers. But he was accused of human rights violations at the time then too. And apparently those facilities have been basically kind of like in disrepair for a while. So the idea that these conditions would be anything but inhumane is very far-fetched to me.
Yeah, big giant torture camp. Of course, Bill Clinton blames his election loss in 1980 on an escape of people from the Mariel boat lift in Cuba. People can read about that. It embarrassed him. But this is like a larger... So this stuff that went on with Cuba and Mexico, right now there's a line being set, and that we should all try to make sure is able to be recognized by Mexico and Colombia, that we will take our refugees or our returnees, let's call them, that you want to return. We're not going to just take them from every other country, which they did during like the COVID era, for instance. And Kurt and Jose Luis of the Soberania show on YouTube have gone into this, but they need this reserve capacity because you need cooperation from when Pete says we're going to take them back to all the places that they're going. Well, actually, that's kind of fraught because you need to actually have a working relationship with these governments to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can threaten tariffs, they can threaten all this stuff, but if, let's say, how are you getting Venezuela returnees back? Well, just put them in Guantanamo, then is where this is being set up. And yeah, we are at a concentration camp logic. I don't think it was too alarmist to say it in the first administration. I think that was a precursor to what we're seeing now.
Yep.
And, I remember Trump taking a shot at Bukele in El Salvador during the RNC. I don't know if people remember that. But it seemed weird because Bukele is a big giant fascist who's locking everybody up. But it seems to me that was probably about getting Bukele to accept some of these removals as well.
No, I mean, just to echo what Matt is saying, I think it's clear that they're looking to create more and more categories for people in America to be inherently criminalized, and then for that inherent criminalization to eventually lead to the label of terrorism. And when someone's labeled a terrorist, they are, forfeit of their civil and human rights, and we get to torture them. That's why you hear, the inherent criminalization of immigrants becoming all about MS-13. MS-13 and other cartels are being put on the state-sponsored terrorism list or the terrorist list in general. And, it's so that we have a better justification for stripping away the rights of not just undocumented immigrants in America, but also just like people who resemble undocumented immigrants, which, spoiler alert, is everybody. Everyone in America could look like an undocumented immigrant. We racialize the conversation to be about immigrants from South America. But as I mentioned on my stream and everywhere I go, every so often they do a dragnet in Boston and they capture a ton of Irish immigrants here who are here without documentation. They do the same to undocumented people from Eastern Europe and also from Canada. And if you don't think you look like a Eastern European or an Irish person or like a Canadian, you're lying to yourself. This is just the way we talk about immigration is geared towards getting people to think that they're the exception. That, even undocumented people who support Trump or Latino people who support Trump imagine that there's going to be an easy visual cue between them and other Latino people or the undocumented people. And that's not even true if you're not Latino. That's what we saw with the Haitian immigrant moral panic that they tried to start in Ohio. And it's just going to continue to spiral out of control.
They were successful at that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I headlined this earlier, but Trump is removing the temporary protected status for 600,000 Venezuelan migrants who were here under the same program that those Haitian immigrants were in Ohio. And he's going to attempt to deport all of those folks. And we saw the profiling of some of these Haitian immigrants who just said, I was fleeing violence. I was a doctor back home. Now I'm doing this kind of work, X, Y, and Z. These are the folks he wants to throw in Guantanamo Bay.
These are folks are called criminals.
Criminals. And there's no evidence. And I'm really disgusted, honestly, by the media, because I keep waiting for the press to ask these questions about the evidence that they have that these immigrants are criminals. Because from what I'm seeing, I see a lot of news outlets just running with it. Oh, they're going after the criminals. No, that's what Obama did. And it was already pretty aggressive in his deportation policy. He deported many, many, many people.
More than Trump.
But the Venezuelan thing, too. Trump tried to do a coup in Venezuela back when he was president. And
destroyed their oil industry.
Destabilized the country. A lot of those immigrants came to the United States because they were fearful of their lives under temporary protected status. And you know what Trump is doing in return? Trying to classify them as criminals, such intense criminals, such violent criminals, that it would justify putting them in our most infamous torture facility, Guantanamo Bay. That is on purpose.
And calling it an invasion after it's actually a result of our regime change efforts.
Yeah.
Well, since you mentioned Obama there, I also have to mention that, one of the reasons Obama's 2008 campaign was so successful and then ultimately people became disenchanted with him was because he ran on closing Guantanamo Bay. Because, during the Bush administration, we became privy as Americans to all types of torture being conducted in the name of the war on terror, not just at Guantanamo, but also Abu Ghraib, prison at one of our black sites in the Middle East. And, it kind of just got buried. Like it became too politically costly, apparently, to close Guantanamo Bay. So, I mean, I think it's just a good example of how oftentimes, even when the Democrats aren't actively contributing to the problem, they leave all the pieces around to do more work. They just leave them all around.
Yeah. This is the actual deep state, not what's been sort of branded, sort of like, I don't know, post office workers and people at the NIH. This is the Guantanamo was like a key example of like, why can't our transformational president who came in with a giant mandate close this thing?
Yep. Yeah,
Well-
I remember that. I mean, truly, I remember that being one of the canaries in the coal mine. And then, of course, the healthcare debacle in the early parts of the Obama administration, where it's like, oh, this is not going to be what it could have been.
I mean, this is one of the reasons why like liberalism is in crisis, not to harp on the Democrats as the Republicans are getting geared up to do like human rights violations, but it is like a bipartisan problem in the sense that, you know, ultimately they've been selling themselves. They've been selling all their compromises to the American people, to American voters on this idea like, okay, well, we're moving to the right because we're trying to ensure that Republicans don't win. Okay, they won, but we're, you know, going to continue to work with them so that we can show that we're not just being obstructionists and so people don't hate us even more. And when they get in power, you know, they're supposedly always waiting for the right moment to use all of this political cachet they've been, you know, developing by being more conservative in pursuit, you know, at least that they say they've been developing. And it's always not the right moment to use it. We don't want to use it on healthcare because something bigger will come. We don't want to use it on the climate, something bigger will come. And I mean, I think ultimately that was just a lie. And we're seeing that now because they have no political capital to get anything done. Like it's all like it was all just an excuse to avoid having people like constantly nag them, I guess, to get to follow through on their promises that they would be saving it for like the big problem. And then what we see Trump is the big problem and they can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Yep. Well said.
Gonna bring in Binder here.
Oh, cool.
Oh, there he goes.
We have him. There he is. Oh.
Hello.
Perfect. I'm out. Oh.
Hello, Matt Binder.
How y'all doing?
Nice of you to show
I didn't even
up.
know you guys started. I didn't even know you guys started.
Sorry, Bradley's on office.
Yeah. Oh, that's why. That's why.
Oh.
I was like, oh, I mean, did our stream break or something like that? Binder, what's happening on your shows?
Sure. So did an episode of Scam Economy last night. The stream is up. The podcast will be going up as soon as we finish up here. And then, we're back in action. Scam Economy is back.
Very nice.
Scameconomy.com and youtube.com/MattBinder.
All right. Sounds good. We will take another call and then we'll figure out what clip we'll play next.
Brandon, do you want to reconnect? I think we can get a better connection from you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, while you do that, we'll read some IMs and take a call. Scary Mountain Wizard. I always remember how Obama nonchalantly says, well, we tortured some folks as if it was another story.
That was meant to be a big revelation.
Yeah.
An admission. That's pretty much all we got.
Yeah. No accountability. Do you think that paved the way for the lack of accountability that Donald Trump faced?
And like, I don't know if accountability is even the right, like you have to use these things to create a better world that you want. And closing the giant concentration camp we're having on an island that we have under imperial subjugation for half a century would have been a good start to it.
It would have been, but the institutions matter more than the results is really how I would
we got to save the banks.
Succinctly describe the Obama administration. Steve Yank, regarding the lady yesterday crying about losing her benefits, I want everybody to get their services, but asking who did you vote for is fine. Maybe they will understand elections matter. Left is best.
No. And I am sorry if you thought she was a Trump voter. If you assumed that, what were you basing it off of? Say it. Say the reason you thought that woman was a Trump voter. It was because she was poor. It's because she's a poor white woman.
Yeah.
That's fucking disgusting to me.
I think that's the same video.
You are
that
the
I've
problem,
seen. Yeah.
actually, that I want to address more than the people not voting the correct way. It's gross to me. It's really, really sick. And anybody who assumed she was a Republican, I think, needs to worry. Like, this is the problem with the majority, is we have a huge range of folks from different circumstances. And the people that are more comfortable aren't really comfortable being in a majority with people like that. And it's pretty goddamn clear. It's sick to me.
Well, I agree with you, and I don't agree with that in the sense of just like, the woman, I think we're referring to the same video, that woman who was crying because of Snap. Yeah, so I saw that too. Yeah, that's the wrong way to go about this, and it's really, I think, a perspective that doesn't necessarily connect with like the lived experiences of a lot of people in the country, and like we should not be saying that if you didn't vote the right way, that you're being taught a lesson when you may go hungry for the day.
Why do you think we're losing? Why do you think Kamala lost under 50,000 people? It's because people like you, frankly. It is. And she won under 25, people who make under $25,000. So actually, like, the Democrats still are that. Keep that up, and they're going to lose that one too.
Right. Yeah. I don't agree with that. And I think that, like, you know, to judge the totality of people's lives, or to even suggest that punishment is an appropriate way for people to learn a lesson about
that voters
voting.
Are responsible for any of this shit. They're not. We're not in a democracy. Get your head out of your ass.
Yeah.
I mean, I missed the call, but, you know, ultimately I can glean what it was about. And I have 2 points, just, you know, ignorantly throwing these out there. First, people crying over whatever Trump might do, like, in a vacuum, there's no way to guarantee that, like, Kamala Harris wouldn't have also done that particular thing in order to, compromise with the Republican Party. Would she have been doing every specific thing that Trump is doing? Absolutely not.
Well, it was an IM about the, like, immediate freeze of all benefits, which I think we can confidently say that Kamala Harris wouldn't have just said,
she wouldn't have froze all benefits, but, like, would they have cut SNAP? Would they have cut, Medicare? Would they have cut Medicaid? Maybe,
maybe.
Who's to say, right? And the second, poverty or immiseration of people is just not a suitable, like, punishment for, deviant behavior. That's like a conservative, like, mentality. Like, if you think, like, it's good that people are immiserated for one reason or another, like, that's just like, then you agree with conservatives.
Right. L Chippy, hey team, I just wanted to say, please keep an eye on the executive order that pauses foreign aid for 90 days. While this will impact all the countries that are in need of aid, I want you to also be aware that it will lead to thousands of layoffs within the non-product sector that specifically implements the grants funded through foreign aid. For those who will survive like myself, we will be applying to get out of this sector because the future funding will be affected, or we could be investigated and just be blocked from funding, period. The ramifications of Trump's executive orders, whether they get blocked or not, will impact Americans just as bad as the 2008 crash and possibly the Great Depression. Please stay focused and ready to take action. Yep, the ramifications of this, and we're trying to say here, they're trying to break everything as much as they can, and the first 2 years are going to be extremely difficult because there's no brakes on the car.
And what will meet the lack or the sort of destroyed state capacity is private capacity. Yeah. Private power brokers like billionaires, the ones that were at Trump's inauguration.
Do we have the first clip of Bernie, and we can kind of pair these two? Might be good. I thought I sent this to Bradley. Yes. I think we could pair these two, right, Matt? You think? So we'll get to calls after this clip, but before I didn't want to forget about this. So yesterday, RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearings happened, and they were like the Democrats actually, thankfully, were very aggressive with him because it's extremely dangerous. I mean, this man is a lunatic, and Health and Human Services is no joke. So
he's an aristocrat that thinks America is too unhealthy to insure.
Yeah.
Wow. Sounds like you two are addicted to seed oils.
I know. I need my fix.
Shooting up sunflower seed oil,
I mean, he's okay with maybe needles for some things, perhaps just to get his muscles to be like gargantuan and bloated, and that weird red thing that's always on in his undertone, the undertone of his skin. I mean, not to be too shallow here, but I know he doesn't believe in sunscreen. He really looks like a catcher's mitt. His face is just so leathery. It's like, dude, just at least wear a hat. At least wear a hat.
If there's any sign that Americans are unhealthy, it's that so many people idolize the way RFK Jr. looks.
Right.
Like he's clearly pin and test. I personally think that and this is going to sound incredibly rude because it is. I think his skin reminds me of, remember when Lady Gaga wore that meat dress to the to that award show?
Of course I do.
That's his skin looks like what the meat dress looks like now, because they have it preserved out there and like it's kind of jerkified, and that's what like he looks like. And people will like uncritically go, he looks great. He doesn't even look great for 72.
No, he does not look great. He looks like he's juiced up on something, and that's all I'll say. Anyway, let's maha all over the place here with Bernie Sanders asking him about the onesies that he sells on his website while claiming not to be anti-vax.
But you told the people in New Hampshire that it was their right. All right, let me do a last question here because I'm running out of time. I think the gist of what you were trying to say today is you're really pro-vaccine, you want to ask questions. You have started a group called the Children's Health Defense. You're the originator. Right now, as I understand it, on their website, they are selling what's called onesies. These are little things, clothing for babies. One of them is titled Unvaxxed, Unafraid. Next one, and it's sold for $26 a piece, by the way. Next one is No Vax, No Problem. Now you're coming before this committee and you say you're pro-vaccine. Just want to ask some questions. And yet your organization is making money selling a child's product to parents for $26, which casts fundamental doubt on the usefulness of vaccines. Can you tell us now that you will, now that you are pro-vaccine, that you're going to have your organization take these products off the market?
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
Yeah, that was just a few months ago. You founded that. You certainly have power. You can make that call. Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with leadership.
Are you supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
Are you supportive of this clothing, which is militantly anti-vaccine?
I am supportive of vaccines. I want good science and protect.
But you will not tell the organization you founded not to continue selling that product. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Blackburn.
Whew. All right, Bernie, handing it to him. I mean,
will say, it's
he's
not even an
such a
original
charlatan.
onesie. It's not even an original onesie design. Like you can get an unvaxxed, unafraid baby onesie, and you have been able to get those for like years from basically any conspiracy cranks website. So he's a plagiarist, and he is. Well, I mean, he's unethical, but yeah, no.
I mean, he said on Lex Friedman in 2023, quote, "There is no vaccine that's safe and effective." And he has the gall to come out there. And in the same interview, he said the polio vaccine.
Lex didn't let me finish. I was actually going to say something very reasonable after that. He's a chicken shit.
He's lying. Yes.
This is the argumentative thing. This is a Mott and Bailey fallacy, which is like you take a position in the comfort of maybe a podcast, saying something like no vaccines are safe or women shouldn't be in combat roles. And then when you actually get called on that, you have to retreat to an actual secondary, more reasonable position, which is, actually, I like some vaccines, but I just got to be clear about the science. Or, oh, I think women should be in combat roles, but we have to have standards. It's chicken shit. And every anti-vaxxer does this. And we didn't even play this. Maybe I can try to find it. Maybe it's on the sound sheet. RFK's asked about his like whole bodily autonomy stance that all these anti-vaxxers like to pretend about. And then in the same sentence, he panders to the right on abortion.
And backtracked his own statements on that, which were pro-abortion in the past, back when he was a liberal.
And this is the truth of every anti-vax person. And I think we turn the sights on them now, is they're all chicken shits. They are adults that are afraid of needles, and they are being politically manipulated because of their fear. And it's time we stop fucking listening to them.
They are folks who are essentially libertarian hippies that have fallen into conspiracism and paranoia and have been manipulated by guys like RFK, who literally know better based on exactly what Matt is saying right there, because he knows he's lying. to feel like their healthcare is a personal consumptive choice based on what oils they ingest, what vaccines they take.
And do you want me to do something that's for the good of everybody?
No.
I'm about myself.
It's libertarianism. It is personalized healthcare, and a rich guy like RFK who can put, chicken feet into a blender and drink it, or, go falconing like he's some, it's literally like, he reminds me of that. I mean, I know he hasn't killed anybody, but like, what's that movie with the DuPont? I don't know that.
I don't know that.
Well, the Samoa thing, we could get to that maybe later, but.
Oh, I thought you meant like he hunts people for sport. I kind of assumed that's what you meant.
I was thinking he's like that DuPont guy from the movie that Channing Tatum starred in, and Steve Carell played him. It was like an Oscar nominee back in the day.
The wrestling team,
right.
Foxhound or whatever it's called.
But he was a rich like DuPont heir that had all these like very specialized interests that only a very like wealthy, overeducated, but insulated person could have. And that's how I feel about RFK. But can we play that confrontation with him and Bernie? So I guess this happened off air. This was at one point a verbal spat between the two of them.
So it's John DuPont.
John DuPont, thank you.
From workers all over this country. Workers, there's not a nickel from corporate tax.
The single largest pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right, but you have not answered the last question. You have not answered my question. How do we make America healthy if you don't guarantee
We're literally 3 minutes over here now. How long does it keep going? And sometimes you're just battering the witness.
Not battering the witness.
Yes, you are. And you're getting upset at it.
So this is today. This just happened. This is a part of this. He's 2 days of hearings. Okay. So that's him accusing Bernie Sanders of being in the pocket of the pharmaceutical lobby. I have got news for you. Besides the health insurance industry, the second industry that would probably be most oppositional to a Medicare for All system, which Bernie Sanders ran on twice, would be the pharmaceutical industry.
And also alternative medicine.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. All the people selling you supplements and all this stuff that Maha, and I know whatever, I'm doing the Amanda Show thing. I don't care. It's funny to me. That they're appealing to is like it's about just being hucksters and selling more products to people instead of what Bernie's vision of healthcare is.
Medicare for all. He said it there.
Medicare for all, which is everybody having access to it and then being empowered over it, not in like what supplement you're going to purchase from some shady website, but the fact that you can go to the hospital and not worry about getting bankrupt, the fact that you can afford your insulin medication, that your child can go to the dentist for free. That's the vision.
Let's be very clear. This is exactly what I said before we went into the fun half, which is that this RFK shit is a psyop protecting the capitalists in the healthcare industry. Bernie's trying to say, hey, if you care about making America healthy, why don't we give Medicare for all? And RFK says, well, you got all these donations from pharma, not even from the corporate headquarters, but the workers in pharma, which, by the way, I will say I think workers in all industries should be the ones trusted over the heads of those industries. And I think that's, I don't have a conspiratorial view of medicine in general that every single person that goes into these fields wants to poison you fucking psychos. Yeah. And so why are we even pandering to this shit? It's because there's billions of dollars being put towards perverting this effort that we need to decommodify healthcare and trying to poison the well against it. And Bobby Kennedy and all of his fluffers in media like Jimmy Dore are party to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Brandon, sorry, you want to say something?
No, I was going to say he gives conspiracy theorists like me a bad name because ultimately he's a perfect example of what, and this is what Matt was saying too, somebody who takes like what is easy to understand, structure that has incentives that will incentivize a certain way to behave. And I'm talking about the pharmaceutical companies. I'm talking about the large health systems and the health insurance conglomerates that work together to drive up, the cost of healthcare in America. And it's trying to supplant that very simple narrative, that very simple thing that's occurring as a result of profit motives with some sort of like widespread conspiracy theory that posits that it's, Jewish people or, the deep state leftists or some, other thing besides capitalism and capitalists that is causing healthcare to go up. It's meant to distract people from like the true cause of it, whether knowingly or unknowingly. And it appeals to the vanity, people's vanity and ego that they can, that they're better equipped to diagnose themselves than doctor, that they're better equipped to navigate their own health or the health of their children than medical professionals. And that's how you sucker people into believing something like that, because believing the, truth about the way capitalist incentives like have driven costs up in healthcare is difficult and it's big and it's upsetting and it makes you feel disempowered, especially if you understand all the barriers to getting that problem fixed. And if you just tell people they can take Garcinia Cambogia, that makes them feel better. And it also fits within the framework that people understand liberation in America, which is consumerism. Yeah. So it's like, empowerment through consumerism. And it also like strokes their ego, like about like, oh, no. And it was funny with the Joe Rogan thing too, where like, you don't like big pharma, but in reality, you're just picking one big pharma product over another. So it's not about not liking big pharma. It's about thinking that you're more equipped with, with your 1 year of science education in high school or whatever that you remember than like doctors. And that's just about like how.
And it was geology too.
Yeah.
These guys, I'm anti-pharma, but I do have monthly testosterone injections that if somehow that sort of lifeline to providing those goes away, I'm going to become a physical mess because I rely on those. And these are the people that are attacking trans healthcare. It's insane, man. It's really, we're through the fucking looking glass.
Foxcatcher was the name of the movie.
The people,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say the people who always warn about like poisoning your body with all these things. They're the ones who take more shit than anybody, honestly. They're the ones pumping themselves with who knows what and taking all sorts of pills and supplements. Like the whole natural living thing. Let's see you actually commit to that then. But they don't do that because they don't believe even it themselves. It's all about
supportive of this clothing,
one thing
which
where
is militantly anti-vaccine.
Is on women's.
Yeah. Bender, your connection's a little fuzzy. You're cutting in and out a little bit, unfortunately. Maybe you.
All right, let me head out and come back. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. In the meantime, we will take a call calling from a +491 area code. It's international. Maybe.
Hello.
Hi. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello. Is this me?
Yes.
It's Dmitry from Germany. Yeah, it's international.
Sure. What's your name again? I'm sorry.
Dmitry.
Dmitry from Germany. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Long time listener, first time caller. Thank you very much. Really enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Hi Emma. Hi everybody. I had two things. One was I'm from Russian Jewish descent, and but I live in America for 8 years. And I wanted to refer to, Sam was mentioning a lot that in Israel, Russian-speaking population is really the most right-wing and the most kind of horrible on Palestine issue, and it was really a problem for me with my family as well. And I was thinking about what the reasons for this could be, and there are probably many, but one of them was definitely lack of media in Russian about anything that's going on in Gaza or Palestine. You know, I was going to give my grandma something passive-aggressive Emma-style gift, so she would read on what's going on, and I couldn't find anything in Russian, and she doesn't speak English. So, you know, probably that's also a factor, I think.
That's a factor. You know, Sam might know better than myself, but my thesis about that might differ slightly. I mean, I just think it's the settler colonial project that's really the driver, and not necessarily the militants of any ethnic immigration. I mean, like, Netanyahu is committing genocide, and he went to school in the Philly suburbs, so it's not, necessarily. I don't know if I would agree with fully.
Yeah, I mean, I think that stuff is a little bit secondary. Like, also, I mean, it's I think worth noting, but also like the Mizrahi generally like lean to the right on certain things. Like that stuff is interesting from a political science standpoint, but the ultimate forest for the trees is a settler colonial context.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. Yeah, and the second thing was I wrote you an email recently. Was about Sam brought it up a couple of times before, comparing Russian oligarchs and American oligarchs and their relation to Trump. So I think it would be interesting to invite some people, maybe for who study Russian situation. So I wrote you an email with some suggestions, but of course you don't have to take them, of course. But some political scientists who write about it. I think your audience would be interested.
I would be interested. So we'll check that. Yeah. You sent it to Majority Reporters?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dimitri. We'll check that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Love you.
I do have one point of contention with the oligarchy stuff, which is actually a couple. Putin and Xi deal with their billionaires more severely in a way that I would like to see, frankly, a lot of ours dealt with. Second of all, do people not know about like the 1900s, and J.P. Morgan and those folks? They're capitalists and they are above the government. And oligarchs sort of imply that they're like a part of a team of the government. The government works for these people in this country, and I think it's worth pointing out. Comparative history in governments is important, but this is an American issue.
But there's no comparison to Russia, in part because the system that Russia has right now
we gave to them.
Boris before Putin. Yeltsin. My brain is not working today. I mean, that was he started off that level of authoritarianism and the influx of capital and cronyism, and then Putin took hold, and he's not let go of power ever since. And that was in part due to our influence. Read the shock doctrine.
Turns out what the USSR needed wasn't neoliberal capitalism.
Right.
Who would have thought?
So I even to compare, when in many ways by defeating the Soviet Union in the Cold War, in many ways we created the system of, or at least incentivized the system of cronyism in Russia. I just don't necessarily, I would agree with you, Matt, that it's not the right comparison, because our government and our billionaires have more power than either of the parties we'd be comparing them to. So, welcome back, Binder.
Is it working now? Am I good?
Loud and clear.
Seems like it's better.
Looks a lot clearer, I think.
Perfect.
You wanted to do this, Matt?
Yeah, this is that abortion section that I mentioned earlier.
So, RFK Jr.'s hearings yesterday, he's testifying today as well, the separate hearing. But this was an important part where he had to reckon with his past as a liberal who once supported evil, dirty abortion.
18 months ago.
Yeah. But now he's pandering to the Republicans, so he's got to pretend that he's changed his mind on that front. And I guess this is Senator Maggie Hassan questioning him on that.
Completely false. Now, let's go to something we agree upon. I am really heartened to see that one area where we agree on is on women's reproductive freedom. In your own words, it's not the government's place to tell people what to do with their bodies. You said that, correct? Yep. Mr. Kennedy, in 2023, you came to New Hampshire and said, quote, I'm pro-choice. I don't think the government has any business telling people what they can or cannot do with their body. So you said that, right?
Yes.
Yep. But you also said we need to trust the women to make that choice because I don't trust government to make any choices. You said that too, right?
Yes.
It is remarkable that you have such a long record of fighting for women's reproductive freedom, and really great that my Republican colleagues are so open to voting for a pro-choice HHS secretary. So, Mr. Kennedy, I'm confused. You have clearly stated in the past that bodily autonomy is one of your core values. The question is, do you stand for that value or not? When was it that you decided to sell out the values you've had your whole life in order to be given power by President Trump?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy, that we can't be a moral authority in this country.
Right, so, but that isn't what you said back in New Hampshire in 2023. My question is exactly when did you decide to sell out your life's work and values to get this position?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy.
So what you're telling us, just to be clear, because my time is limited, is that regardless of what you believe, regardless of what values you have, if President Trump tells you to do something, you're going to do it. You said just now the discussion about mifepristone. Oh, he's asked me to study the safety of it. Here are the safety studies that tell us mifepristone is safe and effective. And I asked Mr. Chair that these about 40 studies be admitted to the record by unanimous consent.
There you go. That's good. I mean, she's appealing to like the MAGA audience there, but all Trump wanted to hear is like, oh, you said you'll do whatever I want you to because you need this power. Okay, fine. But it'll be interesting to see if, like, does Mitch McConnell have this sway? I think this is really what it's going to come down to, because McConnell voted against Hegseth, right? So they needed 4 Republicans to defect, and only 3 did. The 2 usual suspects, Collins and Murkowski, voted against Hegseth, and then McConnell joined because he's leaving power soon, and John Thune has taken over as Senate Majority Leader. His pick, right? So, like, there still is within the Republican Senate, Senate old boys club, the respect for their old guy, McConnell. And McConnell had contracted polio back in the day. It affected his health. He's very opposed to RFK Jr. So does he sway anybody? Does this abortion question sway anybody? I mean, God, I hope so. Like, RFK's legitimately insane. And the letter that we read the other day that his cousin wrote, Caroline, about how he's replaced his addictions in the past with his addiction to fame and attention and validation from this crowd, seems apt. I mean, I think he's also lost his mind to a certain degree with all of whatever he's injecting into himself.
Have you seen Grey Gardens? It's
very that. It's very that. It is very Foxcatcher in my view, an old, a cloistered, wealthy person from a legacy family who has these specialized interests and, frankly, like a bit of a messiah complex.
Who's never got close to a feeling of deprivation materially in his entire life.
Yeah. We'll see. But, like, the only ones that seem to be... Hegseth passed with everything we knew. The no experience, the sexual assault allegations, the police report, the drinking, the horrible budgetary management of the small organizations he worked with. It didn't matter. So we'll see.
I mean, I think they're all getting through, but it needs to be pointed out to people that these are all sellouts. RFK, people like and people are really tuning in more now than I think they were in the campaign. And a lot of the, I think, normie appeal of this Republican ticket was because of RFK saying we need to get healthier and blah, 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 this and that. His solutions for this are exactly in the wrong direction. It's not we need to regulate food more. It's we need to get rid of these deregulations. That's the Trump thing. He's not going to get rid of seed oils. Trump just hired a seed oil lobbyist to run a department. It's not to insure everybody. He thinks that's going to be too expensive because y'all are too sick. You're eating too many seed oils. This is this is RFK.
It's libertarianism.
Yeah.
It's libertarianism.
I've overheard parents at some of the extracurricular activities my kids are involved with, because parents are going to talk about what their kids eat. I've heard them say, like, for example, just overhearing conversation. Well, we'll see what that RFK guy does coming in to take care of this. Like talking about like school lunches and food and things like that.
Yep.
Because I don't know I honestly don't know what people sort of expect. It's like, they're feeding their kid, McDonald's for lunch or dinner every day, and then they're complaining about the ingredients that McDonald's needs to use to like give them exactly what they want. Like the reason, like,
and used.
Yeah, like the reason your kid might be unhealthy is because you're eating unhealthy. It has nothing to do with the actual specific thing like poisoning your child.
Sense. That anxiety makes sense. Everybody's freaked out about their child's health care, but I would think primarily the fear is from the fact that healthcare is precarious on the most basic level. It's already like you have to jump through a million hoops to get your kid to the doctor. Say you don't have a job and maybe you don't meet the Medicaid income, like poverty essentially threshold. You're out of luck in a lot of parts of the country. I think that breeds that anxiety, right? Where they never there's. Go ahead.
I mean, I get that anxiety. Obviously, we get that anxiety. But the fact of the matter is, like, RFK Jr.'s magic pill to like change the ingredients in your like fast food is not what's going to make you healthier. Like, that's not the core issue here.
Just to Emma's
which he's not even going to do. Period. Like, that's not something he can do even.
Yeah, no, that's one other thing. Like the Make America Healthy Again agenda being part of the Trump administration is perhaps the least likely thing to be, done. I'm usually very forgiving when it comes to like people getting tricked by Trump or like, falling into the pattern of believing Trump's lies. But like, if you believe Trump is going to do anything about McDonald's, I don't know. Come on.
I mean, that's like saying like the Pope is going to denounce Christ. I mean, Donald Trump may not love anything more than he loves a Big Mac.
If you're an American Catholic, you maybe already believe the Pope has denounced Christ. But I just, your point to Emma about previously, Americans are alienated from healthcare in their own bodies in so many different ways. Like the historical eugenics programs that have led to like distrust in various communities, people of color, the fact that health insurance is mediated through your job. And so a lot of people live in a very precarious situation when it comes to have access to doctors, which means they don't develop a healthy relationship with doctors. Like how many people have their own GP nowadays? How many people actually have somebody who they go to regularly who has like an unbroken record of their health, right? As opposed to like going to the critical or urgent care in your neighborhood where like, you meet a new doctor every time to get antibiotics for whatever you need them for. And then also like nutrition education in America is terrible. Like no one knows anything about nutrition unless you specialize it in America. Even honestly, your GP might not know a lot about nutrition if he hasn't like taken any specialization in it. And so it's very easy for people to like want someone to come in and just tell them what's healthy, tell them tell me what's healthy. Like they want shortcuts. And it's just about a top-down reimagining of our healthcare system that is, really is what this requires. And that's not what he's pushing. He's pushing on like, giving everyone an essential oil diffuser.
Yeah. And fear. Like the idea that you would defer to bodily autonomy, okay, philosopher, on vaccines, when actually there's a social imperative that requires vaccinating people so that that's outside of the individual level that even George Washington understood, and Ben Franklin had to learn about after one of his kids died because he was an anti-vaxxer. That comparing that and then also saying, well, I don't know about abortion.
Right.
I don't know about women's I don't know about any of that stuff. I don't know about that. But I do know about the people who follow me because they are afraid of needles above any sort of understanding of the world besides that. And you know what? And you mentioned earlier, RFK won't stand on business. He went to American Samoa and trafficked in this anti-vax shit. People ended up getting killed, children. And he said, well, don't look at me. It's chicken shit.
Right. Yeah, that was another part, I think, of the questioning the other day. I forget who who questioned him about that. It might have been Warren or it might have been Bennett. I forget. But like, you know, I think there's an anxiety if you're living paycheck to paycheck, or say you've temporarily experienced some like financial hardship, even if you're not in that same place. When you think about things like healthcare and balancing all of that, and half of our country lives paycheck to paycheck. So you can just take that half and then think about the constant state of anxiety that they are in about major life decisions, about saving, and then if a crisis like a health scare comes up. And for me, that's all you need to know about this phenomenon with Maha and RFK. It is like, you know, any other exploitative scam, exploiting taking a weakness in society and misdirecting people's fears and anxieties towards the thing that benefits X. And in his instance, it's his career and the onesies that he's selling and the supplements that these other freaks are selling and the alternative medicine business.
Yep.
It also helps that like this kind of thing like that he's doing here, you know, it's like I said, you said, it's facilitated by people being alienated from their healthcare and they develop like coping mechanisms, but it's also not the kind of thing that actually like troubles big pharma. Like, you know, big pharma is not worried about you and your kids not being vaccinated because, you know, ultimately does it hit them on the bottom line? A little bit sometimes, but like if enough of you do it and suffer backlash, you'll get vaccinated next time is what they would feel about it. They'll go like, you know, like, yeah, like once it stops working, then you'll come back. Like it's not, or you won't, but like you'll be a cautionary tale. So like he's not harming big pharma by getting a bunch of people to give their kids measles, because eventually, like if you have another kid, like you'll get that kid vaccinated. Like the big pharma will, you know, their bottom line won't be impacted at all.
Yeah.
Big Pharma loves these guys being their foils because they were pressured under a state emergency to develop technology that they probably developed earlier. But they developed it over the course of a very quick time. Thank you, Trump, for warp speed.
Even though it should have been owned by the government.
That's exactly the point. And so this should be a giant, again, like partnership with the private, but the pressure to make these sorts of things public and spread them around the world is muted because these idiots that are saying it's actually a poison that's causing people to die suddenly for no reason are taking up all the air. If I was a Merck or Pfizer executive, I would be paying these people every day because they make me look good, because they're saying this thing that's actually saving lives is killing people, and we just get to own it then.
You know, I mean, think about it this way. Do you think that when dentists, like when real dentists or orthodontists see those TikToks where people are getting like fake caps on their teeth, do you think they're afraid of that? Do they think like, oh, this is going to like hurt my bottom line? No, they go like, oh no, like this is going to be a cautionary tale that people tell me when they come in to get me to fix their teeth.
Yeah.
You know, like
right. What the F does it take writes and says, I have this Facebook friend who is totally in the tank for RFK Jr. and posts accordingly, and who posted a list of Dem senators that lists amounts received from Big Pharma. This list claims that Bernie received $1.5 million. No idea where this list comes from. Matt just alluded to it.
Yeah, smart people who work in pharma, like any workers, support Bernie.
It's because it's just Trump supporters going to open secrets and seeing like the total of perhaps pharmaceutical workers that have donated to Bernie Sanders over a period of time, and that's categorized as the same as if Merck was just giving him 1.5 mil.
Bernie also got the highest dollar amount from the military, meaning soldiers, right? It's not coming from DARPA. It's coming from guys who are veterans.
Maybe it is coming from DARPA.
Yeah, it's just a very obvious category error.
Web Poker with Du Bois, WEB Poker with Du Bois. That's very funny. Which drink do you think Pete Hegseth celebrated with after being confirmed? What do you mean, which drink?
All of them. All of them.
Yes.
Exactly. Which one didn't he?
Fratter 12. You can almost see Frolic playing on the loop behind Cheryl Hines' eyes. I didn't even register that we could see her there. I probably just blocked it out mentally.
I mean, anyone trying to like give into that idea that like she thinks any differently than him or she is just ridiculous at this point. I'm sorry.
There's a whole like, not, you know, I love women. I'm a feminist, but this is, I don't know why I'm even, I don't even know why I'm saying it, but there are like, I'm discovering that there are women that are like really into the Kennedys, like really into them. And I think she's one of them. Like there are women that like really, really love the Kennedys and like, or get off on like the name. I don't know. It's just, it's almost like American royalty to them.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
And I think that's what Cheryl Hines is into. Yeah.
But certainly not anyone under like 40, right? Like that has to be like an older person thing. Like, and I think that's because I remember when people were saying that, oh, like Kennedy's coming into the Democratic primary, he's going to give Biden a hard time. And I was like, what are you talking about? No one cares about the Kennedys anymore unless you live in like, you know, unless you live in New England and you have to worry about them hunting you with a crossbow from their golf court. Like, you don't, who cares? No one cares about them. It's like that's such like a pundit kind of like thing to say.
It really is like, politics nerd. Like in 2020s saying the Kennedys, like they lost the sauce like 30 years ago.
But I thought what you were saying, but I think there's like there's a, I don't know.
Maybe with like,
I'm reminded because Taylor Swift underage dated Kennedy's son. Sorry, she was an adult and the kid was 17. Anyway, no one talks about that anyway. But why was she with him? And why did she buy a house right up there near their place? Because she is into the Kennedy thing. There are women that are into
I would love to know about being a 21-year-old girl.
Yeah.
No, you're 100% right. Like that was like they were one of those like eligible bachelor families, right? You know, like it's just that was a really long time ago. It was like the 80s or 90s where like the same way you would see like maybe Prince Harry. Yeah, like Prince Harry or Prince William on like a tabloid back before they were married and go like, oh, most eligible bachelors in Britain, and people be swooning over them. That was the Kennedys, but like, yeah, that was such a long time ago. I mean, you know, I don't think anyone's like, oh, there are some people, but
there are white. I think it's white women in
wealthy suburbs on the East Coast.
White, yep.
And I also think his last name gives it sort of like this air of like, oh, why can't he be the health person? Like he's a Kennedy. Like he's not gonna. He comes from a name that we trust or know. Right. You know,
the notoriously healthy Kennedys. That's why so many of them live into old age.
Right. Oh, Emma Vergognaland said, Emma, are you familiar with the sign? Wait, I missed it. Shoot, what'd you say?
I said, to be fair, it's more like a Final Destination curse going on there than any sort of health issue.
Oh my God, yes. Emma Vergognaland says, Emma, are you familiar with the Seinfeld episode, The Wager? Elaine Bennis was one of those women. Of course. Yes, of course. That's one of the most famous Seinfeld episodes. Chicago letter carrier. Oh, yeah, that's saying the same thing. DSA Josh, I just Googled it, and in 2019, ABC News reported that Bernie Sanders accepted donations from pharmaceutical executives. Well, that I don't know if I trust that, and I don't know if I trust their characterization of executive.
And I'll just say this, like, that doesn't really prove jack shit to me. There could be good pharmaceutical executives that want to make individual donations. He didn't take any PAC money from these organizations. So yeah, I think kind of irrelevant, even if that is true. It seems like a type of thing that a legacy media organization might emphasize to try to undercut the actual policy that Bernie Sanders promotes, that would undercut an industry that pays for a lot of advertisements for legacy media.
Bullprog says Tulsi pulled the same chicken shit stuff when questioned on her support of Snowden this morning. We'll pull that for tomorrow.
Wait, she's running away from Snowden?
Yes, that's what they're upset at. I mean, this is the thing that might actually sink her, is the Assad stuff and the fact that she had the correct position about pardoning Snowden.
Yeah.
John from back when she was pandering to Bernie supporters. John from T-Berg, Bernie Sanders explaining to a confirmation committee that a onesie, in fact, is clothing for babies, is my new Roman Empire. Yeah,
you gotta get that. Do you defend? What do you say?
Do you defend this onesie? Cult Dog, nice Amanda Show reference, very unexpected. Thank you for the sarcasm.
Trump. That was sarcasm.
I think it's because I do it every time. Promo code said the mass deportation is nothing short of mass displacement, and we should recognize it as such. Yep. Apple cideritis, the talk of Joe Rogan and supplements reminds me of Rogan's past as a supplement seller and his brain force. His friendship with Alex Jones makes sense too. They probably bonded over their shared tactics of selling placebos to their easily influenced audience. They better be lucky if they're placebos, because the supplement industry is very underregulated in this country, and you know who would be deregulating it further? The leather-faced freak that we just were talking about. Yeah.
Well, if we can get some more deregulated supplements back into the rotation, I might be, swayed by RFK Jr.'s campaign for whatever, driest man alive, I suppose. Because some of my favorite supplements were made illegal due to their components being a little too close to amphetamines. And, that just happens sometimes.
I know you said that before, but it's probably for the best that you don't take that, the supplements that are a little too close to amphetamines.
Okay.
Just worried about you. I've had some of that stuff before. The C4, nearly gave me a heart attack. And never had it again.
C4. Oh no, the one I'm talking about is way stronger than C4.
Oh Jesus!
You definitely shouldn't be having C4 though. Like I was watching one episode of Super Nanny, and the parents were just giving their kid C4 before they were playing Fortnite, and I was like, wow, this kid's gonna have problems.
Oh, definitely. All right, guys, I'm sorry. I just saw the time. No more time for calls. I do want to get to another clip. I'm sorry if I kept people on the line. Just sometimes we all get to talking and having a nice time, and I forget about it. Let's do the Bob Menendez thing. Please, please, please. So Bob Menendez, former senator from New Jersey, was sentenced in his bribery case yesterday. And he was sentenced to 11 years in prison. He is pulling a Eric Adams, which is that he is a Democrat trying to beg Donald Trump for a pardon. And the news today was that after Eric Adams went on Tucker Carlson and was saying how, Trump is right about the Justice Department and I'm being politically targeted because I opposed Biden's mass immigration policies or whatever lie he had to say. What do you know? The news comes out that the Trump's Department of Justice is looking into potentially dropping the charges against Eric Adams. So now we have Bob Menendez sentenced to 11 years in prison for engaging in a sweeping bribery scheme while head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
Complete with gold bars.
Yes. Literal gold bars, like a cartoon character. The judge said this to him: somewhere along the way, you became, I'm sorry to say, a corrupt politician. I mean,
might have been early on. I don't know.
It was pretty early on, including the case that he got off on a technicality about maybe what was 10 years ago. And like a true crook, he didn't take that as oh shoot, I really got away with that one. He took that as I can get away with more.
Exactly.
So Menendez, 71, tearfully pleaded with the court for leniency. Again, I don't know what led you to this. Greed was certainly a part of it, the judge said. Hubris was part of it. I don't know. You'll have to try to figure that out yourself over time. And the sentence was 11 years. Now, here he is. This is on the sound sheet, Matt, number 9, doing what I just said before, making a personal appeal to Donald Trump, to King Trump, for mercy on this front. And, it's very transparent, but really all Trump wants is the kissing of the ring. So that I hate to say it, but this might work.
Welcome to the Southern District of New York, the Wild West of political prosecutions. President Trump is right. This process is political and it's corrupted to the core. I hope President Trump cleans up the cesspool and restores the integrity to the system. Are you going
to ask for a pardon? Oh, does anyone buy this? does it matter? Is Trump trying to send a message by, like, will he pardon him? I don't know. But I just think it's incredible how brazen this is, both from him and Adams.
I think Adams feels like, well, yeah, I mean, I think Adams feels like he has that like New York City like relationship with Trump. Like they're both from New York. They can both like, speak the language, forget about it and stuff like that. Dollar slices of pizza, apples.
Right.
Anyway,
Menendez
so like
is from across the river. I guess Trump doesn't.
Not the same thing. Oh,
not the same thing. Trump did have some casinos down in Atlantic City at one time, but I guess it's. I know. You don't need to trigger my inferiority New Jersey complex. I get it.
I think the connection is more like Mayor Adams has a talent for connecting with real estate developers, whether it's accepting money bribes from a Turkish real estate developer or accepting a pardon bribe from the president of the United States real estate developer who over the bribes he accepted from the Turkish real estate developer. I mean, he just really knows how to give real estate what they want in return for something that he wants. Yes.
And the Southern District of New York, is really the top kind of prosecutorial body that goes after some of these cases, particularly if they cross state lines. And what's interesting is that the word is that Trump is going to try to essentially replace the person at the top of the head of the Southern District, and also might like reverse previous policies where all the lawyers hired underneath them were supposed to be nonpartisan. He's maybe asking them like, hey, do you work for the Federalist Society, as another way to loyalty test some of these top prosecutors at this office. Like the Bush administration did a little bit of that with Menendez, and that was met with scandal. Like you can also say like Chris Christie, who was the head over there in New Jersey, was a political appointment by Bush, but the people underneath him, it wasn't the same dynamic here, where Donald Trump is like going after some of the top prosecutorial bodies in the country from an overtly political perspective. And so that's literally what Menendez is banking on here.
One thing I just note about the Eric Adams being a corrupt sort of liaison for developers and also pro-cop is that's part of the same project. I've been in the back of a police car one time since I've been in New York. That was because I went into a construction site to use a porta potty, and the cops arrested me for public urination, which is exactly what I wasn't doing.
Yeah, right.
And I got a citation for that, but they literally told me while I was in the back of the car that we're patrolling this area because it was that waterfront area of Williamsburg that is being heavily developed at that moment. So they are doing nothing. So that is where the priorities of cops are set, which is places that are being developed. And anybody who's undesirable in those places is going to get removed. It's not about any sort of generic public safety, how those resources are spent. And I've said this before, but a Michael Brooks show before the Michael Brooks show, we used to do Two Dope Boys a podcast. We had a guest on there who's like a club promoter who after a show once, off mic, told us about his plans in New Jersey to start a development. And I don't think he knew the politics of like Michael and Phil. And he said, we are going to have the cops do security on that and basically clear anybody out in preparation as those buildings are being put up. Mass incarceration as a prelude for development. It's the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, it really is. And the thing about Menendez, too, is like this was when we're talking about Middle Eastern policy, like he took gold bars from people connected to the government of Egypt. And when we're speaking about the genocide in Gaza and the complicity of the surrounding governments, frankly, when they take U.S. aid, Egypt, really top recipient, and Gaza, the Philadelphia corridor, that is the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. And Bob Menendez, gosh, what was he? He was on a foreign policy committee. And again, I'm blanking on it. He was at the top. It's hard to find because he's no longer, it's no longer public. It might have been foreign relations. Here we go.
Banking, Housing, Urban Affairs, Committee on Finance, and Senate Committee on Foreign Relations.
Chairman on Foreign Relations. There we go. I wanted to make sure I got that right.
And Left Reckoning, we had a guest on, I can't remember her name, but from Cuba. Menendez, one of the key blocks on getting, removing sanctions and normalizing relations with Cuba in the Senate. So I hate that he's still here, frankly, because he should be gone long time ago.
The idea that the top, the once chair of foreign relations in the Senate, who had previously had a corruption scandal and got away with it by the skin of his teeth, was taking gold bars from interests related to one of our, the governments that we send aid to in exchange for basically favorable deals, should be a massive scandal and also not something that we just segment onto just Menendez. This kind of corruption is very, it may not be as brazen in the form of gold bars, but it is much more present than I think a lot of people would like to believe.
Yep. That episode, by the way, was with Liz Olivia Fernandez last year.
All right, guys, with that said, going to read some IMs and get out of here. How does that sound? Goose says, if poverty leads to crime, why are all these rich people committing crimes then? Checkmate leftists. Morpheus, in exchange for a pardon, maybe Menendez can talk to his Egypt connections and convince them to take Gazan so Trump can enrich himself with lucrative Mediterranean property deals. Ugh, yep. Andrew, I work at NIH. You have no idea how crazy and confusing it is around here. Well, maybe call in, Andrew. We'd like to hear. Seed Oil Guzzler says, RFK Jr.'s skin reminds me of Bill Burr's joke about white people not discovering lotion. You do realize you can use lotion other places besides your dick, right? Don't remember that joke. Lotion's not really the problem. It's the lack of sunscreen. That's the issue. Rob from Dedham, Joe Kennedy III, RFK Jr.'s nephew, was a primary away from the Senate in 2020 and is only 44. Hate to break it to y'all, but I think he's going to keep running for things, and we're going to have to deal with our Hyannis sport export for a bit longer.
He's the one who said that it's actually concerning that we're decriminalizing marijuana because it's one of the reasons cops used to stop people. Just
right.
Oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
That was one of the rare victories we had that Markey staved that freak off. Right?
Yep. Markey ran to the left to beat him.
Yep. God, that's 2022? Or 2018? It was an off year, but I forget. Maybe it was more recent, I forget. Pejorative report. Did y'all touch on Trump blaming this plane crash on DEI? My girlfriend is a flight attendant, and this is so insulting. They will dismantle these agencies that we need at all costs. We hinted at it earlier. I had seen while we were live that he said that in the press conference, but I'm sure we'll talk about it more.
Yeah, we should help them wear that out. There's a limited number of mileage you can get when you're having planes fall out of the sky to be blaming that shit.
Yep. Theo,
it is like Nazis, like the way they talk about like Jewish science and all this other stuff. It's the same sort of thing.
Theo Bald Wolfatone says, the Kennedy children used to run out in the street and one would pretend to get hit by a car, which the others would shout, "You've killed another Kennedy." Is that a joke?
I didn't quite follow.
Jay Tingle. Oh, that's why I was thinking about it. Taylor Swift bought a mansion at Watch Hill, Rhode Island to be around one of the Kennedys. Also, don't forget Olivia Nuzzi. Yes, that was the other reason I was thinking, because she why would this woman be interested in like this old cretin? And it's just the Kennedy thing. God. That's what I'm telling you. Mike from Texas, great point by Brandon. Big Pharma doesn't care if you get vaxxed because if there's an outbreak, guess who's going to reap the profits again?
Exactly, they stay winning.
Brooklyn Sue, Ted Kennedy was the closest we had to Bernie in the Senate back in the day. One of the better Kennedys, even though he also had his own scandal.
Who was?
Ted Kennedy.
Yeah, I don't have much time for Ted.
Three more. Theobald Wolftone, RFK Jr. is the only person whose voice would be improved by smoking. Chipster and Worcester, the only good interaction I've had with a cop was when our campus security officer let me and a few other people know that they were told to start patrolling when the regular smoke spot where the regular smoke spot was, and we should spread the news to find somewhere else. That is very nice.
A cop once gave me directions to a Lil Wayne concert, so
That's nice.
Yeah.
I once asked for a cop for directions around Bryant Park, and he told me to get lost.
Yeah. My funny cop story is that the first time I got in trouble with the cops, only twice, and there was one for underage drinking, one for smoking pot. The underage drinking one was there were 4 of us at a concert, and we all got caught with like Coronas, just like really not much. And the cop came up to us and said, pick a number, all 4 of you, between 1 and 100, and whoever's the closest is the one that gets the ticket, and the rest of you don't have to pay the ticket. And you want to know who picked the closest number? Me. Very unfortunate.
We'll have some fun. I'll see you out the trail.
It sounds like a real nice thing for a cop to do, right?
Yeah, well,
make you play these weird games that decide whether they ticket you or not. It's very sadistic, honestly.
It was actually insane. Yeah.
Pretty psycho. Yeah. We used to have cops come to school and give us Minnesota Vikings cards. I don't know if anybody else.
You told me that
experience.
before.
It's like a weird part of it. Was every year they did it.
Yeah.
Back when I had like a big van for the band I was in, like for all of our instruments, I was driving it and a cop pulled me over and asked to check in my vehicle, like with his flashlight, because there was a report of a house being broken into and robbed. And I was like, okay, sure. So he did. And then he let me go. And then like a couple of days later, I get pulled over again. And I'm like, fuck, what did I do this time? Like, what's going on? And the cop drives by. It's the same cop that pulled over. And he just wanted to say hello to me. He just wanted to wave to me. But he used his, the flashing lights and pulled me over to do it. So, they love having fun like that, doing little things like that, making kids think they're about to get hit with $100 some odd ticket for doing nothing, just so they could play games with you.
How lovely. The final.
Also, when my car got stolen, the first thing they did when they showed up was assume I must have come home drunk and didn't know where I parked my car, and then they did nothing. Absolutely after that, yeah, they don't do anything. I found my car.
Let's come up with reasons for us not to do our job on this thing.
Yeah,
right. You know how I found? Oh, to add to that, you know how I ended up finding my stolen car?
How?
Well, they parked it in a no parking zone. Like whoever stole it parked it in a no parking zone, and so a cop ticketed it every day for 2 weeks, and their systems are not connected in any way for them to know that the car they were ticketing was reported as stolen. So the only reason I found it was because it had all these tickets, and when I looked up my license plate on like where you could see like all your tickets, the ticket said where my car was parked, because they have to put that when they're ticketing your car.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Incredible police work. I can't believe that.
Right.
Give them billions of more dollars so they have a greater budget than most militaries on Earth. Love it.
That's a crazy story.
Right. The cops who came to because you have to call once you find the car and you go to it, you have to then call the police to let them know you found your stolen car, so it's no longer registered as stolen. They were helpful in giving me the information I needed to fight I had to fight those tickets by using the information that was stolen, which I did win, but still the fact that you have to go through this stuff is ludicrous. They should have just automatically know. When you register your car as stolen and the officer goes to give it a ticket, it should come up, oh, it's stolen. Let me contact them and let me know we found their car. But no, let's not do that. That'd make too much sense.
Well, of course, the cops in the department about closing cases without doing any real work would be helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys, the final IM of the day. I will find it here.
You're right. I bet when I found my stolen car, they were like, well, another hard day at work. Case closed. We
can
did
take credit for that
Yes.
one. Another crime solved.
Right. This is a culture war. Says decades ago, the right wing set out to start a culture war and shift the direction of acceptable conversation from a more egalitarian to a more divided and right wing. I think we need to color our analysis through the fact that we're in the middle of a culture war because it only takes one side to start a war. I encourage people to find cultural issues to organize around more than parties during these next 4 years. We need long-term projects to change people's conversations and thoughts, not necessarily their votes. I think Luigi Mangione showed that cultural issues can break the propaganda narrative. I would disagree. I think you're right about the culture war that the Republicans have started, and I think you're right that we should be meeting all these groups with solidarity on this front. But Mangione, that's a class stuff. That's a class thing. And that is, I think, what the Democrats need to organize.
The reason the culture war is getting more acute now is because the material struggle is getting worse and worse. And look at productivity decoupled from wages. Look at how much debt people are in. Look at like lack of income mobility. So yeah, I think it's important not to let the cultural fights, because Republicans use it to, achieve power. But I don't think emphasizing the cultural component of something like private health care, that's not a culture. That's a economic system that kills people.
Agreed. Well, appreciate you all. Thanks so much. Matt, Brandon, Bradley in absentia, Sam would say. Appreciate you all. We will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light's shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. The months drifted into years while I shifted in and out of